Troy to episode number 3 of the Mindset to Lead. Absolute pleasure to have you here today. So for those that don't know who you are, can you give us a little bit of an introduction into yourself and a bit about your background?
Sure. Thanks, Georgie. So my name's Troy, as you mentioned. I presently own an incubator in far north Queensland, Cairns, but living on the Gold Coast, and really passionate, I guess, about helping people to turn ideas into reality. I guess I consider myself an entrepreneur. I've had some relative success in the past in business, and it was in doing that, I had an online travel business, that I realized that it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And then from there, really have spent the last 8 years or more really searching for, like, what does it take to effectively turn ideas into reality?
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So that your travel business.
Yep.
So how long were you working on that for?
So I had that for about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was great. You know, I was working from home and had staff that worked from home, and it was good cash flow. But should I go into like more of the detail in it?
Yeah. So I think what's really interesting is that there's a lot of people who own their own business and then go on the journey in search of more purpose. And that's kind of what I'm really interested in. So you said you had that for 6 years. It was a good cash cow. You're making good money, which for most people would think, hey, you've made it, but you decided to go into something else. So I'm interested to know why that was.
Yeah, cool. I guess like winding it back a little bit further than that as well. Like I grew up, I consider myself a highly sensitive person, and it wasn't until later in life that I realized when my son went to school what that actually meant. If I could just tell a little story around that, like he was in prep, he was going into school, and his teacher said, "We're not sure what's wrong with Ethan, but when the kids come up to him in the morning, he'll just burst into tears." And we're like, "Oh, what's going on here?" And long story short is we started researching around. It turns out he was highly sensitive. We always knew he was sensitive, but he reminded me of him. He reminded me of me. And it was that learning around that I realized that what sensitivity is that you're open to more stimuli. And when you're open to more stimuli, if you haven't learned how to process that, you can become overwhelmed. And that sensitivity, for me growing up, it caused me a lot of suffering. And I felt this underlying sense of suffering when I was growing up. And so that got me on the personal development path. And, you know, I'm not sure about you, but when I finished school, I had no idea what I wanted to do or who I was as a person. So I sort of just fell into a few things, and I did a marketing degree and a diploma in business, and then eventually fell into starting an online travel business. But at the same time, I was doing a lot of personal development work, a lot of meditation. And it was that meditation practice that really started to help me step out of that internal mental noise and really tap into who I was as a person. But by that time, I was like really invested in this business and kind of felt stuck in it, with the growing sense of who I was. So I got to that point where I realized that I didn't want to be doing this travel business for the rest of my life, even though it was awesome, but I was still suffering. And it wasn't until I actually moved out of that and stepped into what I felt my purpose was that I really felt like that suffering, at least some part of it, diminished.
And I love that. So you were running a business that perhaps was, well, by some things, was not fulfilling you, and you were searching for purpose. And I think that actually a lot of people go on that journey themselves. They start a business, or they kind of fall into a business, and then down the track they go, I've got my business now, I'm making good money, but why aren't I waking up every day feeling fulfilled? So what I'd love to understand is what process did you go through in order for you to take those first few steps to transition from running that business to, you know, the one that you currently have now?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's not always as easy as just going, oh, I'm just going to move over here. It was actually that pain in being in that business had to get enough, because on the face of it, like, it was a good cash flow business. Like from a lifestyle, it was a really cool business, but I was still empty inside. And I remember one day sitting in front of the computer going, you know, I just can't do this anymore. I just couldn't do it anymore, because for, you know, even when that growing sense of who you are as a person starts to really like connect with you, I felt like I needed to be somewhere else, and that pain sort of increased until it was like it got so much that I remember I just needed to get away. So I packed a bag, said to all my staff, "Look, I'm going away for a few days," and just closed the door and started hitching south, and essentially left with the view of trying to find the answers to what I needed to do. Long story short is I lasted about a day in my hitching south, and then was sleeping on the street, just like legitimately just into the wild trying to figure this out. And then I had the awareness that I needed to just take a leap of faith and transition. So when I came back, I got a business coach. Coaches are awesome, and decided to either work towards selling it or putting a manager in place, and eventually was able to get it to a point where the right person came along and I sold it.
Great.
Yeah.
So, wow. So that's quite a journey. So,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting you say that, because I feel that it's almost like that point that something just happens and all of a sudden like you got to that point, you're like, I can't do this anymore. And then it's obviously all about taking action and, maybe like doing like you did, you sort of stepped away and sort of got clear in your mind. So for the people listening out there that perhaps, are in a job that they don't particularly like, or running a business and looking to start something new, what steps, you mentioned a coach and you've mentioned meditation. So let's sort of take it back and go, okay, so if I am that person, or, you back then, what are the steps that you believe are the right steps in order to get people from where they are to where they want to be?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like number one, in terms of like having a greater sense of who you are as a person, meditation is such a powerful tool because it takes you out. As part of the meditation practice, you're pulling your attention away from that mental noise, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, that mind-made concept of self, so the mind itself, and then holding your attention in the stillness. And it's from that stillness, and I teach around this with the different brainwave states. We drop into like a theta brainwave where we have a greater sense of connection to intuition, instinct, knowing, connection. And it's from there, you can hear those inspired thoughts around who you are as a person, as opposed to that narrative self that is active in the mind, where it just like criticizes and judges, and you can't think your way to your purpose when you're in that state. So meditation is really, really powerful for that. But then what I see a lot of, and I was just had a conversation around this today with a potential client, is that we have a growing sense of like who we are as a person, but then as part of being in this world, we still need to have a cash flow. And it's one thing to have that insight. And this is why I started this incubator. It's like teaching people, where insights happen, how to tap into that sense of purpose. But then at the same time, how do you actually commercialize that? How do you actually take an idea, which is fundamentally intangible, and then how do you create it in this three-dimensional reality? So I think coaches, or finding somebody that already has that success, somebody that's done it before, is really, really powerful, because I see it time and time again where people, they just start building, they'll jump off and they'll start creating what they think. And then it's not as simple as that. I've got this idea, boom, I'm going to make it and the world's going to love it. It unfortunately doesn't work like that.
So then the two steps are have a meditation practice to stop going external all the time and bring yourself internal and get clearer on what you actually want and who you are, and like trust that intuition and what comes up. And then to get a coach and get a mentor, somebody that you can bounce ideas off.
Ideally, I think that's the fast track. Like you can read books, you can figure it out yourself, like anything. But for me, I've got coaches in multiple areas of my life, and I'm pretty sure that you have as well.
Yeah.
It's just like the fast track. I don't want to have to bumble along and make all the mistakes myself. I want someone in my corner in key areas of life that can just help me get the success that they've already got. And I think that's just helps. It's just smart from my point of view. And meditation, it's a magic bullet for so many things, not just like that. It's like stress, anxiety, like it's like flow, productivity, just growing sense of connection to who we are. Like for me, meditation's it's a magic bullet, and I'm so excited that it's becoming more mainstream, because I think the world's going to be different. It'll take us out of the you versus me to a we, because we're in that space. Fundamentally, you realize that we're all connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a meditation practice for the last 3 to 4 years now, and it's profoundly changed my life. Like, I can say that with complete and utter honesty and truth. But when I say that to people, they go, oh, I don't have time to meditate. Or when I sit and meditate, my thoughts go wild. And I'm kind of like, what's kind of the point? So what would you say to people who are too busy to meditate?
You know what? I hear that a lot as well. And it brings me to one of my favorite quotes from Gandhi. And it's, I'm so busy today, I've got to meditate for twice as long.
Love it.
And what it is for me is we're moving into this new way of being. Like coming back to the different brainwave states, is like when most people's waking state is a beta state, which is a state where when we're multitasking, but when we're multitasking, our attention gets fractionated. When our attention gets fractionated, we accumulate stress and anxiety. And then we feel busy, but our mind feels busy, like the mind takes over. But then below that, like when we meditate, we move into alpha and theta. Alpha, when we're in alpha, we're predisposed to gamma, which is insight, intuition, instinct. And in there, once we have our attention away from the mind, well, then we can set our intentions. And it's moving to this new way of being where we're no longer just having to think our way to doing things. It's almost like you drop into the stillness, you align with what is the flow all around you, and you're guided by that, and then you set your intention. So it's almost like that term, which I know it's a bit like co-creating. I'm not sure I like the term, but it is co-creating. It's like you set your intentions and then you just know. So you move into effective doing and being and knowing.
And for people who are wanting to get into meditation, are there any apps or anything that you'd recommend that have worked well for you?
Yeah, there's heaps of different things. And the thing with meditation is you just there's so many different ways to meditate. And it's like, try something. If it doesn't work, try something else. Like I use, with a lot of my clients, like technology. So there's focus bands and there's muses, and they read the brain frequency. And when people can see the data and they can see how they're influencing the data with their breath and with the different techniques and practices, well, then it becomes real. It's no longer this intangible woo-woo concept. It's actually a scientific phenomenon, and you're guiding that consciously. There's so many different techniques. There's other things like Calm and Headspace and the different apps like that. Or there's tools like HoloSync, which is like a binaural beats that plays different tones in different ears, and it actually brings you down into a meditative state. And there's good old-fashioned just focusing on your breath. Yeah, I teach a Zen meditation practice, which is based around 3 essences. The first is releasing tension, because we have a lot of this unconscious energy or emotion that we don't process effectively throughout the day, that just gets stuck. And so it's a matter of releasing that. And then from there, right breathing. Breath helps to control the central nervous system. And then from there, really focusing your attention as an anchor to take control of your attention away from the mind. Most people, I think the big thing, if I can just say, most people have this misnomer that we are the mind, but we're not the mind. There's an over-identification with the mind, and they even talk about the mind as if it's them, but it's not. And it's when you realize that, and then you can start observing the mind, that's when when we truly step into our power.
So if people just could maybe learn just to sit for 10 minutes a day and just do some form of meditation, whether that's just, tuning into their breath or just closing their eyes and going a bit inwards, your view is that they would ultimately, invite a lot more calm and, presence, I guess, into their life.
100%. I think something's better than nothing. But again, I would suggest find a teacher.
Right.
Find somebody to teach you to do it. And then somebody that's like not rigid in their way is the only way. The way I look at it, there's one mountain and there's many different paths to climb it. And that's what I love about the technology that's emerging. It's providing the data, and it's our own individual data. And what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. And so it's finding somebody that can use that technology with you to help find what is really going to help you to excel at it. So I think find a teacher. There's obviously lots of different apps and courses and that you can do, and that's all good. But I'm talking about like ideally, that would be the ideal.
Great. I think that's really, really good advice. So let's talk about your own sort of routines and how you sort of prepare for your day. So do you have any habits or rituals that you do daily that get you in the right state?
Yeah, as it turns out, for sure. I do. For me, it's like starts the day before. So one of the last things I do for that day is plan tomorrow. So plan tomorrow today. And I do that in half an hour increments. So I map it out. I've got a spreadsheet. It's pretty simple, Google Sheets that I use. And then what that allows me to do is plan what's important to me and get on my agenda, make sure I'm doing what I intend to do. The flip of not doing that, and I've fallen into this trap at different times, and I see it a lot with other people, is the first thing when you wake up the next morning is you check your Facebook and you check your email or whatever it might be for you, whatever that is. And then you're giving your attention away, you're giving your power away. So for me, it's like having that day set out. And then one of the first things I'll do in the morning is I'll have a lemon water. I have a coffee, and I think I know I can still actually meditation takes quite a bit of like focus. Coffee is it doesn't inhibit that. Maybe it makes it easier. I don't know, but I have coffee, whether it's right or wrong, but before I meditate. So then I do a stretch for about 15 minutes. My body loves it. And then I do a seated practice for, depends on the day, generally between 20 and 30 minutes.
Right.
And I have my focus band on. So I'm just tracking my data. And what it does is it gives me a score at the end of it. So it's almost like gamifying meditation for me, which is pretty cool. And then from there, I'm on my agenda that I've pre-set out the day before.
So you wake up, you have water, coffee, very important in my life as well. And then you'll sit just for that 20, 30 minutes of meditation, do some stretches. And then that's just your morning ritual of how you get up every day. Wonderful.
Yeah, for me, it's like just really taking my attention, I think our greatest power we have is our attention. So it's taking that away from the mind, taking it away from the internal distractions. So it's a process for me in my meditation is to take control of that attention. And then from there, I'll set my intentions. So I'll do my creative visualizations and just dwell in that. And then from there, get into my day.
Now you mentioned as well, there's what's important to me. So what's your view on it? So for example, some people say, I haven't got time to do meditation and these routines. I've got children, I've got other people that rely on me, but how important do you think making time for yourself is?
I think it's super critical. Like, it reminded me of just this morning, I was meditating. I've got a 5-year-old and she's hanging around my neck and she's dancing on me and swinging on me. And maybe not everyone can do that, but for me, it doesn't worry me. I think there's that saying, you got to fit your own oxygen mask first. And if I don't do this, then I'm not going to be as good a parent to my daughter for the rest of the day. So it's like, I do what I need to do, take that time for myself, and I just make it a priority. It's almost my number one priority is to do that, because I know how powerful it is for me for the rest of the day. Yeah.
For you. And if you could give advice to people, entrepreneurs, people looking to start their business, what's sort of the one thing you believe someone should master in order to maintain that good headspace every day?
Wow. So entrepreneurship, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a tough sport. And I think having a daily practice, having some sort of tools, whatever it might be, to be able to manage your well-being. I see it a lot in as a startup innovation coach, people burning out because they push things for too hard for too long. And you can do yourself some real damage. Like, people are really hurting themselves. I'm talking like chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, fibromyalgia. Like, you can really hurt yourself pushing for a goal. So for me, it's like, develop a practice. I think it's really, really important beyond the physical health, the mental health, and we're talking about like insight. And when you start learning around the science of this, where insight and creativity actually happens, it doesn't happen when you're stressed and overwhelmed. It happens. It's like, how do you cultivate that? So it helps to be aware of that as well.
It's almost like we've got to flip it, haven't we? Because I think people think I've got to do more to be productive, but actually it's almost like we've got to do almost less and make more time for ourselves to sit and be and not be always in doing mode. I think that's almost society is going through this stage now where it's hustle, sleep when you're dead, and that's actually having a really bad impact on mental health. So are you seeing a lot of that with the entrepreneurs you're working with?
Yeah, it's definitely a real rise and grind mentality out there. And I think it comes back to, like, when we touched on earlier, we're upgrading our operating system. Like, I link it to the different brainwave states. Like at beta, high beta, it's a thinking state, and we can't think anymore. Like, we're thunk as much as we can think. So it's a matter of upgrading our operating system. And this comes back to that Gandhi quote as well. I'm so busy today, I'm going to meditate for twice as long. It's tapping into these alpha and theta states where you're aligned with like the broader environment that we're in. We're part of a broader system. And so that in that you can set intentions that are aligned to that. So you step into a greater level of flow. So it's moving into that effective doing and being states that we experience in alpha and theta.
So from running two of your own businesses that both are being, both very successful, what advice would you give to somebody thinking about going out on their own or starting a new business? Where would you advise them to start?
Yeah, cool. I think definitely start. It's a different way to, particularly like if you have a growing sense of who you are, like it's a different way to live when you get to wake up each day and do what you were born to do, to work on your dreams as opposed to somebody else's. So, and again, that comes back to upgrading our operating system, because I feel like that is the future. And from there, it's like where to start. There is definitely a process and a science around starting a business, and it does involve, like, it's a scientific approach, what we teach anyway, where it's about constructing assumptions and then testing those assumptions. And ideally, that's all based around generating revenue initially, not building a business. People tend to have an idea and then they launch into start building their business. And that can be fun and creative, but at that point, you're burning through resources, not even knowing that you can generate revenue. So I always encourage people to build hypotheses and to test these hypotheses, run these experiments around building revenue. And that can be challenging for a lot of people, because particularly if you've got an idea that you're passionate about and then you're out there and you're having to try to sell something, it can test you. So hang in there, do it. It's the way. But this is, a business is the most amazing way to help you grow as a person as well.
And through those testing times that we've all been through growing a business, what advice would you give to keep that motivation and that self-belief?
Everyone goes through it. No one's got it easy. No one just, steps up and go, yay, I'm successful. Like, overnight successes take 10 years. Like, just know that everyone goes through this. And the people that you see that are there, like, they've done the hard yards, they've been through that. And I feel like, if you're not where you want to be, that's like a beautiful indication that you need to look at bringing something else in, learning something, looking for a new awareness, because or overcoming a new hurdle, because I think inevitably we're all put on this planet to be a full expression of who we are, just like, a tree starts as a seed and it grows into a tree, not because it has to try and struggle, just because that's what it's meant to be. I feel like we're the same. And so it's, it's just be that.
I love that thought of growing like a tree, because I believe that if we're not growing, we're dying ultimately. So what do you do in terms of that growth and that personal development day to day? Do you have a discipline there? Do you read a certain amount of books or watch YouTube or listen to podcasts? What's your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. So I like to train at the gym. So I've got goals around my health, like having good goals as well, like goals around my health, financial goals, and goals in each key area of my life. But 100% Audible, flat out, podcasts when I'm flat out as well. Like just learning constantly, doing courses, looking for coaches, looking for people that already got the success that I want, and then learning from them. The thing is, it's all there. We just need to tap in it and not be afraid to spend money on ourselves. Like a lot of the time it's just diverting funds away from recreational activities, which are not necessarily going to move us forward. They're fun in the moment, but the reality is they're not going. They're a liability to a large extent, because we just spend it and it's gone. So I encourage people to delay gratification wherever possible and try to reinvest that funds onto buying a course, whatever it might be. That's going to help you get what you want, essentially.
Yeah, it's investing in yourself and your future, isn't it?
It is 100%.
Yeah. And you mentioned goals there, which I want to sort of dig in a little bit deeper to. So how do you go about setting your goals and mapping those out?
Yeah, that's changed. That's actually a really good question. I'm due to reformat my goals, and just yesterday I just looked at, well, what's my big 12-month goal? Like, because it's coming towards the end of the year, what am I really going to focus on? So I've got that. Like, this is it's almost like my North Star, the goal that I'm really shooting for, in a business sense. So I've just had, I just finished a body sculpting competition. So that was a big goal for me in a health sense, like a lot of diet or a lot of discipline around diet and training. And so I'll do a competition again next year, but now I'm kind of like, it's challenging because now a month out of that, it's like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit like rudderless, a little bit loose around that. So it's like, I need to reset that goal. I guess looking into the new year, it's probably where I'm going to reset my goals. But typically I do them like 12 months. What's my 12-month goal? What's my 3-month goal? And what do I need to do to be where I need to be in the next 3 months? Across each key area of your life: health, wealth, relationships, career, travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that, because I think when people think goals, they think business and finance, and it's at what cost does that come at, And I think that when we set goals, we forget things that are equally as important, like relationships and health, you know. So yes, you could have a goal of earning $1 million, this year and for a business, but at what cost is that going to come of your health and relationships? Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I see a lot of people who start businesses that, they do achieve their goals, and that's fantastic. But in the process, they've lost all their friends. Their relationship is, going down the pan. So how important is it to make sure that you do have, goals and alignment across all elements of your life?
I think you're right. It's critical. It's up to the individual. Some people are willing to sacrifice. I think that's an unconscious way of doing it, because life almost demands balance, is what my experience is. And you can't just work all the time. And there was periods in my life where I tried it, and I just couldn't do it, because life sort of demands, it gives you these other, impulses. So I think balance is really, really important. Mm-hmm. You're right.
'cause in sort of the HR recruitment industry, in the workplace, we talk about work-life balance, and there's a lot of people who don't believe there's such a thing. So when someone says work-life balance, what does that mean to you?
I guess for me, that's I'm very family person. I've got 2 kids. One's 18, one's 5. So I'm quite proactive with them, and I guess that does come back to individual values. But when I meditate, I guess I get a sense of, in that stillness, what is important and what arises. It's through those, like, honoring those feelings, those insights. And part of that is fulfilling a sense of purpose. Part of that is, just honoring the beautiful things that are in my life, the gratitude for all the things that are in my life. And then, I think that's what I love about this new way of being. It's almost like life flows through you, as opposed to you having to think and carry the weight of trying to create that as this individual little mind amongst this massive universe and all these people. It's kind of like you can let that go to a large extent and just drop into being and let life flow through you, and you get to influence things as you move along. So for me, to a large extent, that's how I see work-life balance, is just dropping into that flow of being.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way of putting it as well. I absolutely love that. And you mentioned there gratitude, and before we started talking, we spoke about gratitude and how important is being grateful for the things we've already got whilst we work for our dreams.
Yeah, it's like one of the first laws that I learned around in this personal development space. Keep your vibration high, because the law of attraction, so from it helps you to feel good in general, but it helps to manifest and bring in more of what it is that you want to see in your life. There's actually a really cool tool that I'll share, that I use, and it is related to goals. It's called Positive Prime, and essentially it uses a whole range. It's like a vision board on steroids, in short. And essentially what it does is it flashes like 1,000 different images, which are scientifically chosen because they elicit a positive response in you. And then what you can do, and what I do with mine, and I watch this daily, is you upload your own images amongst these images. So these other images are priming you, but then you've got images that, for me, there's past ones, things that have been meaningful to me, but then there's also things that I want to see show up in my life. And I've used this since about February, March, and I've had the most amazing synchronicities of things just showing up effortlessly in my life that have been in my positive prime.
Could you give a little example of that?
Yeah, so Transformative Technologies is something that I'm involved in throughout Australia. I help to coordinate their efforts as part of a global network, and we're supporting entrepreneurs that are creating technology around mental health, wellbeing, and human thriving. They had a conference last year in November. I couldn't go because it was my son's grade 12 graduation, and so it was on the same time. But I watched some of it streaming, and I seen these 2 guys that were doing this neurostimulation with this V-light, this light gamma wave. And I'm like, oh, I so want to do that'd be so amazing to be doing that. So I put photos of those 2 guys into my positive prime. And through a grant that I got and the work that I do at theSPACE, I had the opportunity to go over to San Francisco and spend a month at the Transformative Technology labs. And I didn't really even know what the lab looked like or what that entailed. Long story short is, when I got to this lab, which actually turned out to be a house, actually turned out to be this big 9-bedroom mansion, I walked in and those 2 guys were living in the house. So I got to spend 3 weeks with them. Couldn't have planned it. It was effortless. Got to try that V-light brain stimulation a number of times, and we became really close. It was just like effortless. I didn't even, it was just, but they were in my positive prime, and the universe conspired to make it happen.
Yeah, I totally get it. I've created a vision board myself, and just certain things have started showing up. Like I put podcasting on it and public speaking, and just I've started a podcast, and I've started doing some more public speaking, and it's amazing when you sort of put it out to the universe and you start getting it reflected back. So I believe in that completely. I think it's incredible.
And yeah, 100%. Coming back to that's your question around gratitude, and it's part of it's being in that state of receiving and gratitude and being thankful. And I think that's why I like the positive prime, because it does that work for you, just like through the images that it shows you. Yeah,
I think that's so powerful because I have a saying. I believe, people say garbage in, garbage out, but I believe garbage in, garbage will stay. So it's almost like we have to be like guarders of our mind. So in terms of like, if someone sat there listening to this and go, well, I've got nothing in my life to be grateful for, where would you advise them to start with a gratitude practice?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, it's funny. I actually, for my clients before coming here, we did a little meditation. We had about 10 minutes before I had to leave and come over. And where the meditation started was just taking them back to the point of conception, how there was like millions of sperm that were fighting to meet this one egg to fertilize that egg so that they could become an embryo, so that they could enter into this reality. And the fact that they're here is a freaking miracle, because it was that combination. So that in itself is something to be grateful for, and to have this body to experience this reality. And I know it's challenging at times, the air that we get to breathe. Like, if you're someone that lives in this country, like, there's a whole host of reasons to see how we're so much better off. And I feel that just the opportunity to live and experience life, and I know it's not always easy, but is I don't know, I look at it that I'm an energetic being here in this human reality, like just in this human avatar. And energy can't be created nor destroyed. Nothing is ever lost. So it's like, for this moment of time, I've got to be in this human form, and then soon enough I'll drop this body. That was not really
no, it's beautiful.
What your question was, but I feel like our beliefs are really important because they can help guide us into a suffering or not. And I think our beliefs should serve us. So
I totally agree. And I think that, that having a gratitude practice, and you just start noticing the little things, like if the train comes on time, or you get a great coffee, or, just these small little things that perhaps before you took for granted, you go, oh, wow, that's amazing. And through that, you just generally do feel more happier. And then as you're more happier, I feel like you attract more of that good stuff into your life. So I love what you're saying there about energy, and what we put out is what we get back. I completely agree with you there, 100%. And a question that I always love to ask is, we all define success differently. And I think we do live in a society where it's very driven by things and money and material. But I'm curious to know, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And funnily enough, I did a blog on this about 2 weeks ago, and it was like about redefining what success is, because you're right. I think we're conditioned to think it's this material and physical, and I see people manipulating their bodies to look a certain way, and everyone's striving for the money, and then. Like, that's, some of those things are not necessarily a bad thing, but for me, like, as someone that grew up with a sense of suffering, my number one goal in life was to move beyond that suffering, and I feel like I did that in 2012. So that was success. Like, in this lifetime, I feel like I am already a success because I don't suffer. And for the people out there that have that acute sense of suffering, for me, suffering is that sense of like just really, like, something, having a trigger, whether it's around something in my life, and it just spirals me down into this like pit of just feeling this tenseness, and this suffering is the best way to describe it. And it inevitably passes, and then feel more expansive again, but then something will trigger it. So moving beyond that, and then for me, that extends to then as a plant-based vegan. You're a vegan as well, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, and this is just my point of view, but I wanted to extend that like that end of suffering onto other sentient beings on the planet. So it's partly why I choose to thrive on a plant-based diet. So that was important to me. And then having optimum health. So like training is really important to me. So that's why I do the body sculpting competitions. I get to wake up each day and do what I was born to do. So for me, like I get to grow into that. So for me, that's success, and that's what I want. And these are things like, and again, they just come back to my beliefs, but these are things that for me help to define what success is for me. And I think they're the main ones. There was a couple other on my list. I can't remember what they were now, but it's that, like to be the full expression of who I am.
To live in alignment, I guess.
Yeah.
That's sort of what we're all, and for me, I mean, yes.
Full,
and
connected.
The reason why I decided to turn plant-based, well, one of the many reasons was that I believe if I sit here and say I feel that we are all connected and we are all energy, if I'm eating another being's pain and suffering and consuming that, then what's that doing inside of me? You know, and
what's it doing to them?
Exactly, absolutely, exactly. That's a whole different topic. We won't go down that. But look, final question, Troy. What does an exceptional life look like to you?
I guess it's like, for me, it's like living that success. And like to a large extent, I live those sort of metrics of success. And I guess now I'm just working towards increasing the resources that I have so that I can have a bigger impact. And for me, really what that is, the impact that I want to have is to help consciousness to evolve on the planet, to help people to become more conscious. And what that looks like is just helping people to step out of that mental noise, to realize that they're not the mind, to connect into a greater sense of who they are, to feel full. And then from there, like to live as a full expression of who they are. So that's the work that I'm doing through theSPACE, is helping people to detach from that mind-made construct of self that keeps people stuck and keeps people suffering. And then from there, with the insights that arise around who they are, it's like, all right, well, how do I create an income doing that? It's like, great, well, this is how we can do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Troy, where can people find you?
The best way, I guess, is you can go to troyhaines.com. That's probably the best way to go. I've got a number of different sites out there, but if you go to troyhaines.com, you'll get me there.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
So much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to working with you definitely in the future. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mindfully podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share it with at least one of your friends. And please leave a comment. Please like this podcast. It would mean the world to me. Let's connect. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Georgie Hubbard on LinkedIn. Georgie L. Hubbard on Instagram. I hope you have a beautiful day. I look forward to bringing you lots more content, lots more value. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.